How are you, mate?
Good, how are you?
You take the bus out here?
No. Okay.
Good. All right. We good for sound? Maybe give a wave when you're all good to go. One in the middle, one on the right. Mark Bailey, Minister for Transport Main Roads. You're good? Are you okay then? Okay, fantastic. Look, a real pleasure to be here at Volgren Bus Factory in Eagle Farm. Here with Mark Thatcher from Transdev for an exciting announcement with 17 more electric buses going into the Redlands area where Transdev run public transport services. Electric buses, electric vehicles are the way of the future. They're not just better technology, they reduce emissions, and these buses are not just zero emission, they're much quieter buses than the buses people are used to. So the people who use them love them, and what we want to see, of course, is action on climate change as well. And every time we get new technology with zero emissions into our public transport fleet, it's a win for action on climate change, which this government, the Palaszczuk Labor government, is very, very committed to. So these buses will be powered in part by solar panels at the depot. They've got 10 big Tesla batteries that harvest up that solar energy and then put it in the buses overnight. So these buses are very, very good in terms of the environment, but they're also just fantastic buses in terms of customers. They're very quiet, they're very comfortable. You know the difference when you get in an electric bus, and we're going to be seeing more and more of them coming into our public transport system across Queensland. By 2025, every single new bus will have to be an electric bus or a zero-emission bus in southeast Queensland, and there'll be a target there for the broader network by 2030 right across Queensland. But what we're seeing, of course, is companies like Transdev getting into this now because it makes economic sense to be putting electric buses out. They're a lot cheaper to run in terms of fuel, and I think customers and people want to see action on climate change. Very happy to see things like these 17 buses coming into the Redlands area. But 9 of them will go out around February, and then you'll see the other 8 go out by mid-year. So not too long to wait for that smooth electric ride. Mark.
Thank you. Transdev's very excited to be partnering with TransLink, Volgren and Volvo on this project. These 17 buses are quite exciting for the passengers over in Redlands. They'll be experiencing a very clean, very quiet experience on this bus, and the community around the Redlands as well will also be experiencing the lack of diesel fumes and that quiet green technology that we're putting forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for your partnership. It's really good working with you. Any questions on the electric buses?
Is there any difference in range with these buses between the petrol diesel powered buses compared to the electric?
I might get Mark to ask that, but I think they're pretty comparable.
Yeah, they're comparable. However, we do have charging opportunities in the middle of the day with the solar farm that we've got. So during peak, we bring them out into the network, then we bring them back during the day, charge them with the solar, and then take them out again at the afternoon peak.
All right. And just on the 17 going to the Redlands, where are we looking at other electric buses and other local government areas?
Yeah, look, we're working with a whole range of different operators. Moreton Bay, for instance, I was up there last year. They're going to have a very big depot. The Gold Coast, I know, have got solar panels and batteries powering some of their buses there as well. So we're seeing operators get into this space because it's done much better technology, and also it's coming into compliance with what's clearly what government policy is over time. I think a lot of bus companies are getting in there early because it's good economics, but it's also good in terms of their social licence, in terms of bringing in zero emission technology to help us in terms of climate change.
I think you said before, all new buses by 25 have to be electric buses. Will you be doing the same, making a similar mandate for private motor vehicles at any time in the future?
Look, not at this stage. What we've wanted to see, of course, is some real national leadership in terms of electric vehicle transitioning. Most other countries around the world have been doing really good work in this regard. We saw a host of prime ministers who were pretty pathetic in this front, to be quite frank, whether it's Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull or Scott Morrison. There was no real commitment to giving the incentives for people to switch to electric vehicles that most other developed countries have done. So it's very heartening to see the Albanese new federal government already act in terms of the luxury tax and some of the leasing arrangements. We're seeing electric vehicle numbers start to surge in the nation, including in Queensland. Subsidies being offered by state governments, but we're also working with the new federal government because ideally you want an efficient way of assisting that transition, and having lots of state governments doing different things or slightly different things is not the most efficient way of doing it. So we look forward to working with Anthony Albanese and the federal Labor government because we know they're genuinely committed to getting that transition to more electric vehicles, and I'm sure there'll be more progress on that front as we go along.
At what point do you think a mandate should be considered for electric vehicles?
Well, look, we're trailing the world because of the lack of leadership from the federal coalition government. So we're a bit behind other countries, some other countries have brought in mandates, but that's because they're much more accelerated and further down the track. Germany, more than a quarter of vehicles now are sold electric vehicles today. You go to Scandinavia, Norway, it's 3/4. So they are much further down the track, and so it's easier for them to be considering that. I don't think we're at that stage yet here in this state or in this nation.
So another matter, Brisbane City Councillor Peter Cumming, he's being charged with driving under the influence of alcohol. Do you think he should resign as councillor?
Yeah, look, I've been made aware of he's been a mid-range drink driving charge, which he admits to. Look, I'll say no difference to what I said with Karen Williams. It's unacceptable. I've always had a very hard line on drink driving. Long before I was Minister, I've never taken that risk as an individual. I think it's really disrespectful of other people and their safety. And Peter Cummings should consider his future, absolutely.
Just on patronage, perhaps about patronage for a moment. There's some new figures out recently that shows that some areas are getting back. I think the trams are back to pre-COVID levels. What do you make of those numbers, and do you think that it's taken a bit of time to get back up to those pre-COVID?
Yeah, look, the pandemic obviously had big impacts on public transport numbers right across the world, and so we know that those numbers will come back gradually, but maybe not in exactly the same form because a lot of things have changed. How people work has changed. So we used to have a consistent, for instance, pattern Monday to Thursday, drop off on Friday as people would take that day off and make it a 3-day weekend. We now have a peak around Tuesday to Thursday because people take the Monday as well as the Friday, often working from home. So, some things will not be exactly the same, but what is heartening is that our November figures that are fresh in are showing that we're back up into the 83-84% band when it comes to buses and heavy rail, which is a big improvement. And look, light rail is actually well beyond going back to where it was. It's actually 110% on the Gold Coast. So Gold Coasters love their light rail, and the numbers don't lie. 110%. They are well ahead of other forms of public transport, and those numbers keep improving on the Gold Coast. So building that light rail stage 3 to Burleigh is an absolutely necessary step forward for the Gold Coast to prevent gridlock down there. It's the 6th largest city in the nation. It's bigger than many capital cities like Hobart and Canberra and Darwin, and it needs public transport infrastructure, and that's what we're building as a state Palaszczuk government.
Sorry, just on Councillor Cumming again, when you say you should consider his future, do you want him to resign? Do you want him to stand down?
Well, look, I think he should resign, yeah. Like I've said that about Karen Williams, I'll say that about Peter Cumming. My view is the same. I think as a public official, it's not unreasonable to expect that you shouldn't be endangering the lives of your constituents and the general public, and that's the same for any private individual as well. If there's any risk of drink driving, take a cab, take a ride share, get a friend to drive. You just shouldn't be taking the risk out there, and as a public official that's been entrusted by the public with an endorsement to represent them, it's just not on.
Thank you.
Sorry, Minister, just one question from Bundaberg. What are you doing to increase the capacity at Bundaberg Port, and what's the latest on the common user facility?
Yeah, look, I've seen massive change at the Bundaberg Port in the 7 years that I've been the Minister. We've seen big upgrades to infrastructure there, better roads, better drainage. Hang on. I'll start that one again, sorry. Since I've been the minister in the last 7 or so years, I've seen big changes at the Bundaberg port. Much better infrastructure. A lot of the old oil refinery, infrastructure's been removed. Better drainage, better roads, better. The sugar mill's been entirely re-roofed. There's been some big changes there. So, look, I expect that to continue. The common user facility there will be important. I understand one of the companies there is in administration, but I think given the strength of the market, I don't expect that there'll be any shortage of private interest in taking that over and continuing the work there at the port. And the port's being very well